Hello, today I want to talk about how I went from civil engineering to software developer. I'm going to talk about the path I took, why I chose a computer science degree, and whether I think a computer science degree is worth it. So the story starts in 2012 when I graduated from civil engineering from the University of Saskatchewan. If you don't know where Saskatchewan is, it is in the middle of Canada, and it is a place that gets extremely cold in the winter. I'm talking minus 40. If you're curious, look it up. But anyways, I graduated in 2012 and I very quickly found a job as a field engineer. Now, a field engineer is someone who goes to different engineering sites such as mine sites and construction sites and collects data that goes back to the office for engineering design. In the classical engineering world, and what I mean by classical engineering, I mean civil engineering, mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, etc. There is this concept of doing your time before you can actually be in an office designing. So what that means is you spend 5 to 10 years out in the field collecting data for design and understanding how the field works before you get to design on your own. Now, this isn't like a hard-written rule, so it varies from company to company. But in general, in North America, that's usually what's expected. You spend 5 to 10 years before you actually get to go to the office and design. So as I was doing this as a new graduate, I started to ask myself, is this what I want out of my civil engineering degree? And I came to the realization that it really wasn't. I started thinking back as to why I did civil engineering in the first place, and I realized that it was the design aspect, the part where I got to design and then eventually see a finished product. In the case of civil engineering, that would be, roads, buildings, maybe tunnels, and that process is obviously a lot longer than in software development. So as I thought back to my civil engineering degree, I remember there was one course that I had really enjoyed, but that was not super related to civil engineering, and that was a computer science course I took. And in that computer science course, I found it very fulfilling that I got to code something and see the finished product very quickly. Now, the coding I did back then was very basic, but even then I found it extremely fulfilling to be able to code and see product. And so I started to think, well, why not pursue computer science and look for a way to combine civil engineering and computer science? And so I started doing some research, and I found there was a second degree program at the University of British Columbia that pitched this idea exactly. Basically, it said, if you have a previous bachelor, you can join this program so that you can take the knowledge from your first bachelor and combine it with computer science. And I said, that's exactly what I want. And so I decided I was going to join that program. Now, the reason I went the university route versus attempting to learn how to build software on my own, given I already had a degree, was, I think, two reasons. One was the online education world was not as big back then. It was definitely around, but this was 2013, so it was nowhere near to what it is now. And the second part to it is my mindset back then was all about university degrees. I believe that to learn something for real, you needed a university degree. And I think that's sort of a common pattern nowadays. Back then, I think people saw the university degree as a necessary evil. Now, not so much. And so back then I said the university degree is the way to go. And so I joined the second degree program at the University of British Columbia. And I went in with the idea of, civil engineering, computer science, let's combine it, and then I'm gonna build something cool related to engineering. Well, as it turns out, I sort of lost track of that as I joined the program. I sort of went down the route of the regular computer science student, and that route is you learn the CS theory, you then go out and you get an internship, then you learn the CS theory, you go out and get an internship, and eventually you get that software engineering job. And back then it was very appealing because the industry was booming and the salaries were very high. So I kind of lost track of my thought about civil engineering, computer science, combining them to build something cool. And I went down the regular, computer science student route. So we fast forward now, and I've been working in this industry for the past 10 years, and I definitely learned how to build software. I'm very happy with what I know about software and very confident in my abilities for building software. But if I start to ask myself the question of, do I think the CS degree was worth it to get to where I am now? I would probably tell you no, knowing what I know now. Now, it's always been the case that you can learn how to build software without a CS degree. I've met many great software developers, software engineers through my career that are much better than I am, and they've learned it all, what you can say, on their own. Well, not on their own, obviously, because there's always resources, online courses, mentors. But anyways, they didn't go the regular route of let's get a CS degree, and they're really good at building software. So it was never necessary. In my mind back then, it was. But if I ask myself, knowing what I know now and being myself back then, would I do a CS degree? I would say, no, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. But that's obviously really easy to say standing in the position I'm standing now. So, take that with a grain of salt. The second question is a CS degree worth it in general? And really the answer to that is it depends. If your goal is to go deep into hard CS problems such as database design, AI research, distributed systems, unsolved CS problems such as whether P equals MP, it's a very interesting problem. If you're curious, look it up. Then I would say a computer science degree is definitely worth it. Not because you can't get to a point where you can actively participate in helping solving those problems without a CS degree, but because the CS degree is designed to give you the foundations for those sort of questions. And also because if you go the CS degree route, you'll be surrounded by a lot of people who also have an interest in solving those problems. And it's always much better to be surrounded by people with similar interests to yours to get to the destination you want to get than to not be surrounded by them. So in that realm, I think a CS degree is definitely worth it. I don't think necessarily it's the only way, but it's worth it. Now, if your goal is to build software, if right now maybe you're a professional and in your profession you see a need for a certain tool, software product, and you're like, it'd be cool if I could build that. Or maybe you're just someone who has an idea of something they want to build and you don't necessarily want to go down the CS theory route because that's not really what inspires you. You just want to learn to build software. Then I would say I don't really think a CS degree is worth it. That was sort of the shoes I was in. So in that position, I don't think a CS degree is worth it. And not because you can't reach a point where you'll be able to learn to build software very well through a CS degree, but more because it will take you a lot longer and there are a lot of resources available today that will allow you to get to your goal a lot faster. It was always possible, even when I started computer science in 2012. But I think today it's, I'm not gonna say easier, but the way to get there has fundamentally changed, and I think it's opened the door for a lot more people than it had in the past. Because previously you needed to learn, coding syntax to some extent before you could even build a product. But now you can get started building without really knowing any coding syntax. Not to say that it's easy to build, there's still the part where you need to understand systems, so you're not gonna necessarily build the most sophisticated product from the start. But the only way to learn to build is by building, and so you start learning simple. With all the resources available online, you can get to a point where you can build very sophisticated systems, or the system that you want to build, maybe the system you want to build is not sophisticated, much faster than if you went the CS route. So to summarize it, I do not believe a CS degree is worth it if your goal is to build software, especially today with the assistance of AI. It is much easier to get to the point of knowing how not to build anything, to build in something than it ever was. And I think if you are interested in building software, you should just go out and get started, because there is no better way to learn to build software than just going out and building software. And slowly but surely you can ramp up the sophistication of the software you're building, and you might surprise yourself with what you can accomplish. Anyways, that's the video. That's my take on computer science degrees, and that's the path I took from going from civil engineering to software developer. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you enjoy my content, you can check out more over here, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.